Thank you, Ellie, for your heartfelt talk. I want to tell another story about a dream, which is, and it's a European teacher that was the teacher in this situation, that someone comes to this teacher and says, every night I dream of these mice having races. I think it was mice. And I'm really tired of this, and that's all I ever dream about. I dream about these mice that are having these races, and I wanted to stop. And so the teacher said, we'll do such and such and such, I forget what it was. And then the man said, oh, I can't do that, the finals are tomorrow. So we're really attached to the things that bug us, you know? Are there any questions? Yes.
Was Kwan Yin a real historic figure?
Kwan Yin Bosal. So Kwan Yin Bosal is the Korean name for the bodhisattva, who in Chinese is called Kwan Yin, and then in Japan is Kanon or Kanzeon, and in Sanskrit, and I forget what the name is in Tibetan, but it's very famous, and then in Sanskrit is Avalokiteshvara. So we're talking about a bodhisattva. So a bodhisattva is a being that has vowed not to attain nirvana until all beings are awakened. So they're awakened, but they're not going to see the fruits of that until all beings are awakened. And no, they're not historical figures. They're wonderful. So one story is that Kwan Yin Bosal, and Kwan Yin Bosal is over there. And let me see if I can. No, is that the right one? Yeah, you can't see it, it's too far away. Kwan Yin Bosal is often depicted as a feminine, very feminine bodhisattva. All the bodhisattvas are kind of androgynous, but Kwan Yin Bosal is depicted in the most feminine way. And this is the bodhisattva who perceives the sounds of the world and therefore has great compassion. 1,000 arms, and in each arm, in each hand is an eye. So 1,000 arms, 1,000 eyes, and sees, hears the sounds of the world, and then will help. So definitely legendary, but another legend is, so on the one hand, definitely Avalokiteshvara. On the other hand, there's a wonderful Chinese legend that it's some kind of princess, you know, some kind of earthly woman who took this great vow and then poof, became a bodhisattva. And these kind of coexist, these stories kind of coexist. And Kwan Yin Bosal, of all the bodhisattvas, this is the one who's most popularly depicted. I remember when I was still in graduate school, and there was a cheap little scroll in a sort of shop that sold things like that, and it was a Kwan Yin. And I actually wrote a poem. I knew nothing about Buddhism, but I wrote a poem, Kwan Yin sitting by a waterfall. I remember your name. I don't know where that came from. I didn't start practicing until like at least 10 years later. But yeah, so they're not historical, but they're inspirational. Also, you are already Kwan Yin Bosal. So when we chant the Kwan Yin Bosal chant, which we did at the start of practice, we just do a little snippet of it, just the repetition of the name, not the rest of it. And, you know, we read names of people we're chanting for, and maybe you secretly had someone you were chanting for that you didn't want to say their name because you knew they'd be embarrassed. So we chant the names of people, we say the names of people we're chanting for, maybe we're just chanting on our own for somebody. It's kind of directing our own energies. It's directing the group energy. Although most of us don't know, I don't know most of the names, you know, that I read, because people write and say, will you please chant for so-and-so? And okay, sure. But we're sort of directing the group energy in a certain way. And if you chant on your own, you're directing your own energy on a certain way. You can just chant Kwan Yin Bo So without directing it, but you're directing energy. And also, you're awakening your own Kwan Yin Bo So, because we are already Kwan Yin Bo So. We can hear the sounds of the world. We can see what's happening in the world. And our direction is to help. We can't do everything. Each of us can only do a little tiny thing, but we can do something. And so that's the direction of the Kwan Yin Bo So chant. Yeah, thank you for your question. Are there any other questions? Charlie, do you have a question? No.
No, I was trying to figure out who was typing. That noise you heard.
No. Okay. Yes. Microphone.
So thank you, Ali. And could you actually say something about the 4 different forms of our meditation plus Kwan practice and what that got to do with helping with this situation when your thoughts are going crazy? We all have this experience, especially on retreats. And if you could say something, yeah, if you could say something about all these different forms of practice, how it will help us to see when the situation arises.
So the question, I'm not sure if people heard it, the question was how familiar with Zen meditation. And then we also have a chanting practice, and we did a little bit of that today. I'm very delighted to say that Ed Kanda on the screen took me over to a friend of his who has a wonderful property and house very close to Lawrence, might even be within the city limits, which is perfect for a keto. And so hopefully we'll have a keto sometime. And keto is a chanting retreat. So hopefully, and keto means energy way, which gives you a good idea. And hopefully we'll be able to do that in September or October. So ketos are very loud. Everyone has a percussion instrument. You know, there's bells and there's drums and we walk around and everything like that. This place is so isolated, you can walk around outside and do that. Okay, and we do this very energetic chanting. It's not like Gregorian chant. It's definitely not like that. It's very, very energetic, and you can do a keto for like months. People do like, 90-day retreats that are ketos, solo ketos, just chant, chant, chant. That's what my teacher did. Or you can do it for an afternoon, you can do it for a day. We'll do it for a day or an afternoon. I've done ketos, like 3-day ketos, and so has Stan, and they're really wonderful. So chanting meditation, it's about listening. If you're chanting alone, you're listening to yourself. Most of the time we talk and we don't hear ourselves. We move and we're not aware of our movement. We do things and we're not really aware of what we're doing. So if you're chanting, doing a solo keto, solo chanting, then even if it's just on a regular solo retreat, just a little bit of chanting, you become aware. And when we're chanting together, we become aware of each other. On a keto, you get this kind of energy from everybody. It's really extraordinary that if you're doing a long keto, at the end of the day, it's almost like there's a being in the middle of the room swirling around the energy. I'm not a woo-woo person, I don't go around talking like that very easily, but you can just kind of feel the the coherence, this kind of entity that the group has created. But even, you know, even when we're just chanting for like 20 minutes or 10 minutes together in practice, we become one. We're acting together. We're not acting as individuals. We're acting together. And our thinking mind, I mean, you can chant and chant and chant, get everything correct and do it by memory, and you're not in the room at all. You know, I know I've done that, you know, I know these chants pretty well. But if you're paying attention to the chanting, then again, it's sort of meditation in action, this meditation mind in action. So we sit on the cushion and we think, oh, I am, you know, in samadhi, you know, like that kind of stuff. We start acting, we start chanting, and then it maybe become clear that we're not, you know, or that what we think is samadhi is not actually samadhi. It's just another delusion about feeling good and reifying the self. So yeah, so chanting is together action, and it's sort of our meditation mind, our don't know mind, our awake mind. It's action and it's listening. It's being aware of ourselves and of other people. So that's chanting, and of course, you know, some of the words are very wonderful, but I won't go into that because that's cognition, and everyone understands that. And then, although using cognition to wake up is another story, but you know, sometimes the words just hit you. I remember the Heart Sutra in English. It just hit me the first time I chanted. I'm like, whoa, what is this? You know, it's fabulous. And then I recited it to my mom. And my mom and dad, they lived in San Diego, and I was visiting them, and we were in this lovely cafe in Balboa Park. And I start reciting the Heart Sutra, and I go, no eyes, no ears, no tongue. You know, my mother gets this look of horror on her face, like, what's happened to my daughter? You know, what cult is she in? But, so, yeah, so then another form of meditation, which we only do here on retreats and on Saturday morning between sitting sessions, is walking meditation. And our walking meditation, maybe you've read Thich Nhat Hanh, he talks a lot about walking meditation. His walking meditation is very, very slow, and it's very different from what we do. So our walking meditation is relatively fast. We're actually walking. And I always recommend that people keep their practice going. If your practice is mantra, keep the mantra going. If your practice is, you know, wadu, then do the, you know, great question, do the great question. If it's what am I, don't know, then do that. You know, whatever your practice is, just do that as you walk. And again, walking meditation, unless you're in a solo retreat, you're doing it together. We want to keep the same distance from each other. Some of us have short legs, some of us have long legs. We used to want everyone to put their feet down at the same time, but that doesn't work. I mean, if Ting is behind, you know, Jarvis, we have a problem because Jarvis is 6 feet what? 4, and Ting is like 4 foot what? 4'11", right. So Jarvis's hip goes up like to Ting's head. You know, that doesn't work. So what we do is we ask people to keep the same distance behind each other. So again, that's a group thing. You're acting as a group, not as an individual. And another thing about walking meditation, we have a lot of cool art in this room, you know, a lot of cool stuff. And through the windows, you can see like tops of trees and things like that. So in walking meditation, you know, a lot of times when we walk, we kind of, oh, look at that, oh, look at that, oh, look at that. But in walking meditation, no, your hands, our style is the hands like this, and our eyes are down, you know, 45-degree angle, sort of, and, you know, enough so we can see the person in front of us, so we know what's going on. And you don't go, oh, wow, that's really cool art. You know, you don't do that. You just keep your attention very, very steady. You don't get distracted by anything. So walking meditation, oh, sure, we do it so that we, you know, release the tension, the physical tension. in our legs and stuff like that, and our back, and, keep ourselves going, because it's really, it's very rigorous physically to sit for a long period of time. So every 25 minutes or 40 minutes, depending on the context, we get up and we walk. But it's more than that. It's actually a form of meditation. It's a practice in not getting distracted. So that's walking meditation. And then there's prostrations, which I no longer can do because I have these terrible, terrible knees, so I do chair squats instead. But prostrations are a really powerful practice. They completely bypass our intellect. You can't, there's nothing intellectual about them. You stand up, and then you go all the way down, which I obviously can't demonstrate, but I couldn't even demonstrate because the screen is small. But you go all the way down, and you end up with your hands, your hands like this, and your head down. And so you're standing up, and then you go all the way down in this posture, which we're apes, and this is a posture of submission. That's why it's, Muslims do prostrations, because it's submitting to God. So we're in this posture of submission, but we're not submitting to anyone. We're not prostrating to the Buddha. We're not prostrating to each other. Some people say the small self is prostrating to the big self. My teacher would say that sometimes. But I think it's just like wired in. We're just doing this prostration. We're just, also like Christian monastics also do prostrations. And also in Judaism, on Yom Kippur, there's one prostration people do. But so it's like you don't have to prostrate to anybody or to anything. You're just doing this motion, standing up and then submission, standing up, submission, standing up, submission. And what you're doing is you're kind of rewiring yourself. I mean, that's been my experience. You sort of rewire the way you work, your sense of self, your the way your body and your mind connect. They become rewired in a certain way. And in Korea, and I'm speaking informally, I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but it changes you. Prostrations change you, and it's not about what you're thinking. It's really a very physical thing. And in Korea, traditionally, I don't know if they still do this, but traditionally, if you come to a teacher, as in Ali's talk, this person has this nightmare all the time, and you come to a teacher, or maybe your life is falling apart in some way or another, as everyone's life does at some time, or you think your life is falling apart, it's not actually, but whatever it is, if you come to a teacher, they say things like, do 500 prostrations a day, do 1,000 prostrations a day, because that's going to rewire you. It's going to change you in a way. So it's an extremely powerful practice. When I first started practicing, and then a couple of years later, we had a kid, I had a baby, and it was really hard to sit. And when he became a toddler, it was really hard to sit at home, because then, lap. Babies see somebody sitting in meditation, they see lap, and they want to go sit in that lap. And so I asked Barbara Rhodes, Zen Master Songhyang, who led the retreat last month here, the head of our school, and at that time she wasn't the head of our school, but she was a teacher, and I said, what should I do? She said, just do prostrations, 108 prostrations a day. So that's what I did. For several years, that was my home practice, because if I did anything else, if I tried sitting, our son would wake up. He's asleep, I'm going to go sit. 2 seconds later, wah! I don't know how he knew I was sitting, but he did. And then he could walk, and then it was impossible. So so prostrations are a wonderful, wonderful practice. And if you have knees and backs that allow you to do it, I really recommend at least 108 a day. But even if you can't do that, like these days at home, I do 3 prostrations. I mean, it's pathetic. It's totally pathetic. But I do them. Sometimes I can do 9. Ooh, that's a good day. 4 great vows. If you're going to practice at home, First do the 4 great vows, and I recommend everyone practice at home every day. First the 4 great vows, and then some amount of prostrations. Maybe 3 prostrations, 9, 27, 108. Why am I saying that? Those are all divisors of 108, which is 2 squared times 3 cubed, which is a magic number because in ancient India, they were really in love with number theory. And if you multiply that by 4 to the 4th, it's too many. So anyway, so yeah, prostrations are absolutely a wonderful, wonderful practice. And I really recommend them. They're grounding to, is a succinct summary, but there's so much more than that. So let's see, meditation, chanting, walking, prostrations, and kong-ans practice, which you didn't ask me to talk about. Kong-ans practice. So in Japanese it's koan, in Chinese it's kong-ans, and in Korean it's kong-ans. I guess American pronunciation of Korean is kong-ans. So kong-ans are these questions, like does a dog have Buddha nature, or what is the sound of one hand clapping, or what is the sound of one hand? Austin just answered it, or maybe tried to answer it. I'm not going to tell anyone if his answer is correct or not. So you go into the little room we have over there, or you're on the screen, and we interact on the screen. And the teacher eventually, after you've talked a little bit about your life and stuff like that, and if you have any questions, then the teacher will hit you with a question. And these questions are designed, or rather, it's not the questions that are designed, what the teacher is looking for is designed to cut through our standard ways of responding to the world. Everyone has standard ways, and they're pretty standardized. Like most of them have kind of the same sort of ways of responding to most things. Like if I say, how are you? You're either going to say great or terrible or none of your business, but you're not going to say the cow jumped over the moon. So so kong-ans are designed to cut through that, to get us to a place, to get us, to open up our don't know mind, our mind that is really free and really clear and before thinking. So you can't analyze these questions and come up with like a 70-page paper on what the sound of one hand is, which talks about audiology and talks about physiology, and you can't do that. They just cut through the bullshit that we create around ourselves and that society creates around us, and they give us a new way of responding to things, which is really connected to this don't know, this great question. What is this? What am I? These great questions, and all the kong-ans are connected in some way to this great question and this open, open, open mind. And some of them point this way and some of them point that way, some of them point that way and that way. There's 360 degrees you can point, and then there are all the things in between that and so on and so forth. But it's a really wonderful practice, and it changes. It can really change how you respond in your own life. You're learning new patterns that are different from the way we standardly respond in our life. And then a situation arises, and instead of doing the obvious thing, you can step around it, or you can open it, or you can do all kinds of things that you couldn't do before. So that's kong-ans practice. And then the second part of Ting's question was, how does it help us? The way it helps us is all side effects. So my teacher would say, Zen is attain your true self and help this world. And all the things that I can talk about it and say, well, this will happen, like I just did. I said, kong-ans practice, it can open you up and give you new ways of responding. But what all of these practices really point to is, what is this? What am I? They're pointing to this essence, which is empty. So they're pointing to this thing that has no name, no form. They're pointing to that. And we become, we can attain that. We can attain that self that is no self. We can attain this don't know. We can attain this emptiness. There are all these words for it. We can attain this. And then naturally, our actions change. Naturally, the way we respond changes. So it's not like, there are all these meditations, meditate this way in order to do that, meditate that way in order to do this. Zen is not like that. Zen is this, it's very insistent, attain your true self. Cut through the bullshit. Find out what you are. And everything else is a side effect. So, thank you.